Dobar dan, dobrodošli u još jedno specijalno izdanje naše emisije. Ovo nam je drugi gost po redu. Posle Jevgenija Kafeljnikova sa nama je Mark Petchey. Verovatno ste čuli za njega, ukoliko ste na Twitteru sigurno, jer ima veoma mudre komentare. On je nekadašnji teniser, bio je 80. na svetu, trenirao je Endija Marija. Ono što je zanimljivo jeste da je bio trener, i to vrlo uspešan, dve teniserke sa ovih prostora. Sa Silvijom Talajom je došao u top 20, a sa Tinom Pisnik do top 30. I sada radi kao teniski komentator i analitičar za brojne kanale, za ITV, BBC i mnoge druge. I veliko mi je zadovoljstvo što nam se on danas pridružuje. Mark, I guess you were trying to understand a bit of what I was saying.
I got a lot of my former pupils in there.
Yeah, you recognize
Fiorentina. Good times. Good times.
Okay, first of all, thank you for joining us. I know you must be on a busy schedule in New York.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me on.
Okay, so as you probably presumed, we're going to start with Djokovic. How do you see his level of play so far?
I mean, I think it's been phenomenal. I mean, obviously, you know, to try and do the calendar slam, he's picked the hardest year as well, in terms of the Olympics as well. Obviously, that was, you know, it was a huge ask for Novak. Obviously, the allure of trying to get the golden slam was obviously something that you can understand that he wanted to do. So, you know, and again, you know, I think, you know, there's so many things that go into creating, you know, a historic moment, and the things that can go well, things that can't go well, things that at times are a little bit against you. I mean, the Tokyo weather was absolutely brutal for him as well. So the fact that he's come out of Tokyo, not had like the perfect preparation coming into New York as he would like to have. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're as great as Novak or if you're just a general tennis player, you like to have your routines. That was somewhat thrown out of kilter because of what happened in Tokyo. To be honest, I think he's made it through to the quarterfinals, and he's in great shape. He's certainly hit enough tennis balls.
Okay, but he did struggle against Kay. He did struggle against Brooksby. Do you think he'll be able to raise his level for Beretini? Because my feeling is that he's going to need to.
He is going to need to. You know, Mateo is he's a difficult player because he's very much plays, you know, a very high intensity tempo. Massive serve, one of the biggest forehands that we have on the tour. A lot of slice backhands, which is a big change of rhythm and everything else. So yeah, he's going to have to play better. But Novak's never won a major without dropping a set. So I don't think these are big concerns for him in my book. You know, he knows that there were bigger tests to come. Yes, he needs to win those matches, but at the same time, you know, he's become an absolute, you know, legend of the game in terms of building runs through majors. Nobody, you know, really has done it better than him in so many ways for almost a decade. So from that point of view, not concerned, but yeah, there's some big challenges still ahead. This is, you know, this is not a signed, sealed and delivered, you know, calendar slam with the likes of Beretini, Zverev and other players that are obviously Medvedev that are just kind of sitting there waiting to have a shot at him. So, you know, I think it's, for me personally, if I was sitting in Marion's shoes, I'd be pretty happy with where things are right now.
What do you make of Berettini's game right now? He wasn't properly tested. He played only Cincinnati, didn't have any real opponents. Do you think he'll be able to rise to the occasion in a manner that big players usually do, to, you know, upgrade his level in order to face Djokovic?
You know, yeah, I mean, I think he will play well. I think that, you know, Novak brings some very unique problems for tennis players, which is why you can look at it and say, well, you know, players at times, he makes players not look as though they're playing as well, to be honest, because the reality is of the situation is that he's such a great returner. And psychologically, even for someone like Mateo going out there, you know, in the back of his mind, he goes, yeah, I've got a great serve, but I'm also playing somebody that's returned a serve better than anyone else that's ever played the game. So that, with that comes a psychological pressure. I mean, Mateo played Andy at Queens this year, and honestly, and I obviously am helping and advising Andy, I mean, the serving percentages from Mateo in that match in terms of how close he was to the line were the best I've ever seen, you know, for a set and a half. You know, he can take your racket out of your hand. So that is a stress for Novak to manage. But obviously, he does have the backhand, which is a significant kind of safety zone for Novak. So regardless of everything else, you know, I just feel as though Novak's history plays an important part in these moments against players like Mateo.
Who do you see as the greatest threat to Novak? Some might even argue that Zverev is in the best position to win the tournament right now, and Medvedev really hasn't been tested so far.
Again, great point. I think it's very fair. I think Medvedev hasn't been tested, but that's also due to his quality rather than anything else that he can do on the other side of the court. Obviously, if it got to the stage that Novak plays Daniil in the final, obviously the Australian Open is going to loom large in both of those two. Medvedev has a good attitude in terms of trying to solve problems. But I would agree. I think that Zverev right now is probably the guy that Novak's most worried about playing, because not only does he have the big serve, the second has got a little bit more consistent behind it. But for me personally, what was so impressive in his run for Zverev in Cincinnati was the forehand. The forehand was, he was maxing out on the forehand about 80 miles an hour, which is a big hit for Sasha. Wasn't losing too much power, wasn't sort of decelerating through that shot. We know how great the backhand is. That's never faltered. So yeah, if you're going to ask me the one person that's left in this draw that Novak would be the most concerned about playing, then it would definitely be Sasha.
Yeah, it really does look that lately he fixed those holes. You said forehand, but second serve as well. He's had two really huge second serves, and it's not about those huge second serves against Sinner. It's more like the consistency. He's not making those double faults in a row anymore.
He's not, but again, I would go back to my earlier point of, just how well that Novak returns serve. He finds players' backhands, and we know how important on the men's tour finding your opponent's backhand is, in terms of the pace that a forehand can generate, the variety that a forehand can generate as well. And that's what will be interesting against Sasha. How much time does Novak ping the ball back to the backhand side? We know that the German actually quite likes hitting his two-hander more than his forehand, but Novak has the dexterity. He has the ability to manipulate a return better than we've ever seen. So therefore, he can find the forehand as well, which comes with a little bit of stress for Sasha, who loves to hit second serves into the body. Novak will make adjustments with his return position. I mean, these are the small nuances at this elite level that these players will make, and Novak will make, and has been so good at doing, that causes problems for the opponent down the other end. But there's no question that this is there may not be Roger and Rafa in this tournament, but there are some players who are right there, very close to winning their first major.
Tell me, Mark, what's going on with this tournament? You can't turn your head. There is a spectacular match around the corner. I mean, it's like every other match is top 5. You're like, this is the best match of the tournament, and then comes another. Okay, this is the best match of the tournament. So, what are your, let's say, two biggest, impressions so far?
I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, you can argue it's the pace of the court that's giving people an opportunity to swing for the hills. Even when they're down 2 sets to love on the men's side, they suddenly still believe that there's a way back, because you can create a lot of winners. You can still create a lot of pressure on your opponent. Francis Tiafoe was saying in his press conference afterwards that he felt that the reality was that, without a couple of the bigger names here, that there were players that felt as though they had more chance of potentially going deeper in the tournament. Don't have that chance really against some of the more established names in the top 10, like Daniil and Sasha and obviously Novak. But, there are more holes in the draw on the men's side. So there's more sense of collective belief in the locker room that they can make some runs. So, these tournaments ultimately as well have weathered the pandemic better than anyone else. So money is a huge motivating factor for sports people. So this has been a tournament obviously with more opportunity, therefore the deeper you go. I mean, you look at Zandschlup today. I mean, the guy's made as much money in his career prize money, from this one tournament. So there's a lot on the line. On the women's side, there's been a lot of first set winners. Whoever's won the first set has managed to roll away and win the match, whether that's in 2 or 3. But like Sakari last night and Andreescu, finish at 2:14 in the morning, another 3.5 hours.
It was crazy.
Yeah, crazy stuff. I don't think there's one thing. I think there's a number of things, but I also feel like there is a sense, particularly on the women's side, that there's opportunities knocking there. And Maria's got more experience now. She's been through to a semi-final at the French, had match points, so she's suddenly believing that she's got a chance. Bencic has suddenly won a big tournament at the Olympics, got the gold medal. Confidence is the magic elixir for a lot of these players, and a lot of them came into this tournament with confidence as well. So I think that's one of the huge factors.
There are 3 18-year-olds in the quarters, and I'd like to hear your opinion not on this current tournament, but on what future holds for all 3 of them in your opinion. So Lejla Fernandez, your favorite, Ema Radukanu, and Karlos Alkaraz, who has been the talk of the town for the last few days.
Yeah, let's start with Carlos. I mean, look, obviously from a young age, he's been well thought of. I mean, Juan Carlos Ferrero isn't going to sacrifice his time if he doesn't believe the guy's going to be top 5 in the world. You know, that's Ferrero's kind of benchmark, and you know, and rightly so. He's a former world #1, a winner of a slam, so he's not going to waste his time traveling the world with somebody that he doesn't believe isn't going to get somewhere close to that. So, you know, I think Carlos has been very special from the back of the court. Honestly, having watched him a little bit, I hadn't watched him that closely till coming in here. His backhand has been more of a revelation than his forehand. We knew how great the forehand was. Backhand has been sensational here, along with the temperament and the movement. You can't hit great shots in tennis if you don't move well. If you can't arrive on the ball on balance, you cannot. I don't care how good your technique is. He moves unbelievably well for an 18-year-old. So for me personally, the one area that he needs to work on massively is his first serve. He doesn't get enough free points on his first serve at the moment in men's tennis. I think against the better players, he will come unstuck on that particular department. He won't get as many chances to break, and I think they will break him. But listen, he's 12 months away from knocking on the door of the top 10 if he stays injury-free.
And what about these 2 young girls that have been soaring through the draw, especially Fernandez? I mean, Raducanu was pretty impressive. She lost, I don't think anyone since Serena. I saw that that anyone since Serena, she lost like what is the number of games total Raducanu lost so far? I'm not sure.
It's minimal. It's minimal. To be honest, in Britain we don't count games. We just count rounds. You guys count trophies. We're just counting rounds. So games is irrelevant. We're rounds. We're at quarters. We're celebrating like we won the tournament right now. So yeah. So listen, Emma, I've known now for just over a year. I was fortunate enough to get to work with her in lockdown. I think it was beneficial for both of us, to be honest. Yeah, some significant changes in her game during that time where she had no competition. Some things just happen by chance and they're good for you. Listen, I love Emma, you know, as a person. I admire her attitude. I admire her just on every level. And I think that, you know, I'm so excited that she's been able to push through as quickly as she has, because sometimes you can get lost in the trenches of tennis and it takes you a while to get out. You carry that scar tissue through your career and it's not easy. So, you know, thankfully she's dodged a lot of that. She's already 74 in the world. Very solid game, as you've seen, a great mover, unbelievable returns. She's going to give Azarenka a run for her money over the course of her career in terms of being one of the best returners. And there's a lot of ceiling room. I mean, she's big test against Petchey. It'll be very interesting to see, you know, if her kind of returns can extract enough errors quickly from Belinda, but Belinda's confidence is high.
And I was pretty impressed with the way Fernandez backed up her win over Osaka by beating Kerber. I mean, that's the hardest thing to do, right?
Yeah, I mean, I had a couple of big wins in my career. There were only a couple, and the next day was tough. I mean, it's tough. Your expectation level goes through the ceiling, and suddenly maybe the game isn't quite as good as it was. Look at Shelby Rogers, for example. You know, for a dramatic fall off that kind of plateau of tennis. Lejla, I've watched a lot, and I've been very intrigued at how she wins tennis matches as effortlessly as she does, because she isn't huge. She looks at times as though she has the shortest swings that a tennis player's ever had, and yet she creates angle and pace like nobody else. Pretty sure she plays with a longer racket, gives her a little bit more punch out of the swings, a little bit more leverage. But the angles that she's created, so that over the last the last year has been one of the most impressive things for me. She's an artist on the court with huge self-belief. And yeah, you don't get to this stage of the tournament by fluke. You know, you don't get there because you've just been handed a very easy draw. You get there, especially the draw that she's had, by being an incredibly accomplished tennis player. She's one of the hardest workers that the women's tour has. She's often the first on the practice court, and she's often the hardest on herself as well. So credit to her. I love her game. She's like I said, she's creative, and that's really, really important to win with charisma as well, and she has oodles of it.
And finally, I'd like to go full circle and go back to Novak. I often see your tweets as if you're asking people to give more respect to Novak's name. Where do you think the disrespect comes from?
I think it comes from very myopic sports fans, to be honest. I think that, you know, the reality of the situation is that if they put themselves in Novak's shoes and had sacrificed and dedicated their life to becoming the best in their field by some considerable margin right now, and certainly, you know, I think it's fair to say that he's been the best of the generation. I'm bored with the GOAT debate, but, you know, the best of his generation, when you look at his head-to-head, I find it very hard to not appreciate, admire it, respect it, stand up and give it a full ovation, because having played this game to a small level, I know how hard it is as a sport to come from a country like Serbia, where it must have been incredibly difficult to have not only had the dream, but then the ability to be able to kind of conquer the world. Again, I think that part of, you know, my admiration comes from the journey as well. It's not just about the success and the destination, it's the adversity that he's had to overcome. And for me personally, because his game makes it look so effortless, at times I just don't think people appreciate how good he is. Some of the shots that he makes look simple, people have kind of gone, oh yeah, but he always makes that. And it's like, yeah, he may always makes that, but there's not many other people that 3 meters outside the singles line on a slide hit a backhand winner from there. And, you know, I just genuinely hope that, you know, tennis fans and sports fans around the world get behind him on this quest to do something historic. And at the end of the day, can look at themselves in the mirror and think, you know what that's taken to achieve. He needs us to be up in the stadium, standing up as he walks in, going, this has been an incredible journey, and we appreciate it. If you love Roger, if you love Rafa, you love Mateo, I get all of that, but you can't not respect what he's done for the sport and what he's given to himself to give himself this chance.
Okay, that was a really nice way to finish, Mark. Thank you very much for your time. I hope we can do this again sometime.
Anytime. Give me a shout. Love to be on.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.